This changes everything for the Chicago Bulls. After hearing great news from Lonzo Ball himself saying that he's healthy and ready to go for next season, the Chicago Bulls are looking at his trade-friendly contract and are now seeing him as a trade chip for the Chicago Bulls this offseason. Hello, my name is Isaias Jackson Jr. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Bulls Digest. We're going to get into the news and notes on the $20 million guard Lonzo Ball being a trade chip for the Chicago Bulls this offseason. However, 67% or you guys are not subscribed. 32.5% of you guys are. We appreciate you guys on both sides of the field. Yeah, I skipped that 0.5. Don't hurt me. But look, a lot of fighting is going on today. A lot of WWE action, a lot of UFC action, a little bit of boxing. And one way you can contribute to the fighting is punching that subscribe button, hitting the like button, and also just a huge thank you for supporting Bulls Digest here as well. Bulls expected to make $20 million guard available via trade. This is coming from Adam Taylor as well. And we talked about Lonzo Ball just a couple days ago, him just being healthy and ready to go. We're going to talk about those comments as well. We're going to bring those up in a little bit. But we talked about the positives, with Lonzo Ball. When he is on the floor, he does bring excitement. He does bring an energy to the floor when he's on point. When he is hooping. We do got to give credit where credit is due, because sometimes, the three ball doesn't work, or we do see him become a little bit of a turnover machine when the pressure is on. But that's when he's on the floor. And so when Lonzo Ball, of course, is dealing with his injuries, it does take a minute to kind of get back into the hype train of Lonzo Ball. I mean, we missed 2 years of basketball from Lonzo Ball, and then, of course, we've seen multiple injuries right after that as well. So just seeing Lonzo Ball become, have that tag injury prone to his name, I do think is a huge gut punch. But the Chicago Bulls took a gamble on him when they got the tandem together with the Zach Lavines, the DeMar DeRozans of the world, and then, of course, Nikola Vucevic. Thought magic was going to be made there, at least on this side of the world. I thought magic was going to be made there, and unfortunately just wasn't the case at that point in time. The Chicago Bulls gave Lonzo Ball a 2-year, $20 million contract extension earlier this year. The Bulls have a team option for the second year of the talented playmaker's new deal. According to Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times, Ball's new deal, which is worth $10 million annually, means that he's now a potential trade chip for Chicago. And yeah, of course, 2 years, $20 million, of course, that's a trade chip. That's not, now, of course, in terms of just basketball money, that's a cheap contract. That's for a solid player like Lonzo Ball. Oh, yeah, I think a bunch of teams would love to scrape and scratch and claw for a player like that for that price. Now, how often is he going to get on the floor, of course, is the question that needs to be asked right after that. Now, of course, continuing, Joe Cowley goes on and quotes, "As soon as he signed that contract, he was up for trade because that contract is so trade-friendly," Cowley said during an appearance on 670 The Score. It's basically a 1-year, $10 million deal. The team has the option for the next $10 million for year number 2, of course. And Cowley continues, "It's not only Lonzo up for trade. Nikola Vucevic is up for trade. And I mean, the Bulls are trying to change this roster over and again. Talk about walking a fine line and a tightrope. They're trying to do so while still trying to be competitive for some ungodly reason. That's the path they continue to choose. So enjoy late lottery picks every year." Yeah, that's pretty much what I think he hits the nail on the head there. If the Chicago Bulls are still going to try to rebuild with the younger guys that they have while still trying to be competitive, yeah, you're going to be swimming in mediocrity. I think you're just going to be swimming in the same ninth seed that you have been at this whole time with the Chicago Bulls. So honestly, there needs to be growth. A huge shout out to Shaquille Barnes. Look, I love this channel and I love the guys working on it as well. He talked about the Chicago Bulls kind of mimicking the Indiana Pacers rebuild, which honestly, looking at the Pacers right now, I think they've done great work. When it was between Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner, I was a huge Domantas Sabonis fan. They went the Miles Turner route, and Miles Turner, even though he's been snubbed for multiple Defensive Player of the Years, you've seen the great work that the Indiana Pacers have put on. Yes, I gave them credit. It sucks. It was like it sucks. It's awful. I don't want to, but you got to give credit where credit is due. And the Chicago Bulls, they always talk about the rebuild, the rebuild. They talk about now it's not the process, it's not the 76ers, but they talk about the route where they want to go while also trying to stay competitive, which in that case, they have pretty much have been failing a whole lot going into these last couple years. Ball has struggled with injuries throughout his tenure with the Bulls. As such, it's logical to expect them to explore the veteran guards trade market. It makes sense to try to get assets in return for his services rather than let him walk away for nothing. And yeah, I mean, that's honestly just the point right there. You want something for Lonzo Ball because Lonzo Ball can contribute to your team when healthy, and of course, as we mentioned before, the trade-friendly contract is valuable for any team, and we're going to get into a team that could potentially want somebody, a valuable player like Lonzo Ball, especially with a contract like his. But you don't want to let Lonzo Ball walk away for nothing. You do want to at least help out the roster a little bit, or at least try to build something with this roster. Now, when saying that, what can you potentially get for Lonzo Ball? Now, of course, going into Lonzo Ball's quotes that we talked about before a couple of videos ago, during a recent episode of his What an Experience with Lonzo Ball podcast, the Bulls guard provided an update on his current recovery process. I'm feeling great, man. Back on the court this week, man. Ball said, so moving around, got a long summer, gearing up for next year. So, of course, Ball missed the final 22 games of the Bulls season due to a wrist injury. That absence was the latest in a long line of issues that the former Los Angeles Lakers guard has dealt with over the last 2 or 3 years. And we talked about it, whether it was the wrist, whether it was the leg, whether it was the shoulder. Lonzo Ball has dealt with his fair share of injuries and has sat on the sideline a great amount. And even with the Chicago Bulls, we talked about him being out for those 2 years, and everybody was behind him. The Chicago Bulls, were behind Lonzo Ball. It wasn't like he was just continuously getting injured. This was just an unfortunate injury that Lonzo Ball sustained that just kept getting worse over a period of time. And he talked about it extensively, numerous of times. And you've seen what he had to do to get back on the court. Now and we talked about the feel-good story. This has been, when I first got into the Bulls Digest, I said Lonzo Ball right now being back on the court is a huge feel-good story for the Chicago Bulls. Because at the time when the Chicago Bulls were still kind of treading at midline, not a whole lot was going on. It was just like, Lonzo Ball coming back is just a feel-good story for the Chicago Bulls. This is something that we can ride on for the rest of the season and still end up in the 11th seed and call it a day. And then we could just end off and go on with our merry way. However, wasn't the case at all, and still, unfortunately, Lonzo Ball just still ended up getting injured. In that instance, it still didn't come through and end off the season with the Chicago Bulls. So Ball reportedly drawing interest from the Mavericks. According to NBA insider Mark Stein, Ball is a reasonable trade target for the Dallas Mavericks. League sources say Dallas is expected to at least explore whether there are any feasible trade pathways to Boston's Jrue Holiday. Complicated as that would likely be given the 3-year and $140 million still left on Holiday's contract, while also maintaining an interest in a far more reasonable trade target, as we discussed on DLLS podcast, Lonzo Ball, Stein reported. So that is insane in itself. You want Jrue Holiday, and who doesn't want Jrue Holiday? But from this instance, Jrue Holiday, 3 years, $104 million left on the contract. It's not something you want to eat up, especially after you just got rid of a superstar in Luka Doncic, in itself. And you brought in somebody with the likes of Anthony Davis, who's already getting his fair amount of money as well. It's not somebody you would want to add after just shaving off the contract of Luka Doncic coming through. If you're the Dallas Mavericks, I think your best bet would be to look at somebody like Lonzo Ball in terms of just somebody with a reasonable contract, somebody that's going to come out there and either start when need be and still, or just come off the bench and still contribute a great deal for your team. Lonzo Ball is going to be available there. Now, in terms of the Dallas Mavericks, that is going to be, I don't know, I'm sorry if I get flack for this, that will definitely be a really, really injury-prone team. And I promise, that'll be the last time I'll pretty much run with that narrative, just injury-prone, because I do think that, in some cases can be watered down. But when you look at the Dallas Mavericks, say you go for somebody like Lonzo Ball, now you're stuck with but now you have Lonzo Ball, who has his fair share of injuries. Kyrie Irving, who potentially will come back till January. Anthony Davis deals with his fair share of injuries. Klay Thompson, fair share of injuries. And I could even go to Spencer Dinwiddie. We could go to Spencer Dinwiddie as well. And even with that, I don't think the Chicago Bulls would get that great amount of value from Dallas, considering with what they want to do with this team. They want to be competitive. They want to be, or they want to go to rebuild mode. They want to do both all in once, for the Chicago Bulls. What are you trying to get from the Dallas Mavericks? Who is going to be a valuable piece from the Dallas Mavericks that's going to at least make you a whole lot better, after this trade? I don't think there's anybody there that can do so from the Dallas Mavericks. Now, I do think the Dallas Mavericks coming through could come clutch for sure for the Chicago Bulls, collecting somebody like Lonzo Ball, actually continuing on Lonzo Ball's career, seeing what the Dallas Mavericks and Jason Kidd can do that Billy Donovan couldn't with Lonzo Ball, and seeing if they can make him more reliable, seeing if they can make him more available there on the court, and seeing what they can get out of him as well. So Ball will certainly cost less than Holiday would. However, this projected impact would also be lower, and we'll talk about that as well. Having missed 2 whole years of basketball, Ball may have not have been the same player he once was. Therefore, the Mavericks must make a choice on how they want to approach improving their guard rotation. Nevertheless, Ball could be a strong addition to Jason Kidd's rotation. Chicago will be open for trade talks this summer as they continue to explore ways to retool this roster and expedite their rebuild. And honestly, it doesn't have to be just Lonzo himself. Vooch, of course, is going to be up for trade this offseason after hearing his quotes in his exit interviews. So, seeing how this is fair enough, Lonzo Ball and Vooch could be pretty much neck and neck going off together with each other. It's just a matter of what key piece, who is going to be the guy, or how many picks are you going to get? What's their value, for Lonzo Ball? What's the value for Nikola Vucevic, or both? If a team choose to go for both. And also, just looking at the Dallas Mavericks wants and needs in that situation, I think Lonzo Ball is definitely going to be your best bet, because although Lonzo Ball isn't going to give you Drew Holiday numbers, it's not like you're going to get the Drew Holiday of the New Orleans Pelicans, and it's not like you're going to get the Lonzo Ball of the New Orleans Pelicans either. I think these guys have taken a step back. Drew Holiday, of course, you're getting solid defense, even though he definitely got exposed a little bit in this playoffs throughout this season. Drew Holiday, of course, you would want over Lonzo Ball, but Lonzo Ball is going to be a whole lot cheaper. And of course, like I said before, all on and off the bench, he is going to provide, he is going to facilitate, and he's going to score, and he's going to improve as well. It's just a matter of how is Jason Kidd going to use him. And just going off the stats right here for Lonzo Ball and Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday's average you 11 points per game, 4 rebounds, coming up on 4 assists per game, giving you a steal, 0.4 blocks, 6'4", is going to be 35 in about 5 days. He's coming up, his birthday coming up pretty soon. Shooting 30% from corner threes, 44% and from the field, and shooting 35% from 3-point range. And even then, even just looking at his points per game, that's his second lowest since his rookie season. So we talked about him taking a step back. We talking about him being Drew Holiday, not really being the Drew Holiday of old. I definitely think you could go a whole lot younger, go for somebody like Lonzo Ball, who is going to be there and contribute a whole lot more, even though the stats, although you're seeing it much shorter, much smaller compared to Drew Holiday's in terms of points, 7.6 points per game, 3.4 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 3.3 assists, 36% from the field, 34% from 3-point range. You're getting a 6'6", 27-year-old, and as we said, even though the youth is there, it's just a matter of how available are you going to be. So what do you think? Do you think the Chicago Bulls should make this move to go out and trade for Lonzo Ball, seeing that he does have a trade-friendly contract, or are you willing to ride the waves with Lonzo Ball, or does your loyalty lie with the man himself? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.